Hello there and welcome to the Sleepy Alchemist. Tonight, we begin in the mossy corner of a medieval village, where a faint curl of smoke rises from a thatched roof, and the warm tang of elderflower hangs in the air like a secret. The hour is late. You can almost hear the owls muttering about their dinner plans. Inside a crooked shop stitched into the edge of Raven's Hollow, a man lights a single candle, because a new book has arrived. Not just any book, though. This one hums softly, like a sleeping mouth pressed into leather. You probably want to know what sort of book hums, right? Or why a seasoned apothecary would flinch at the feel of its cover. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're listening from, and what time it is where you are. I love hearing how far this little firelight reaches. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Rain taps gently against the warped shutters of Master Ellis's apothecary shop. He is not a young man, not for several decades now, and his spine groans like the beams above him as he stoops to retrieve the parcel. Wrapped in oilskin, sealed with red wax stamped by no crest he recognizes, the package rests on the counter like a dare. There was no sender's name, no carriage, just the sound of it being set gently against the door, and the flash of movement disappearing around the corner. Ellis cuts the wax with the tip of an old sickle, then peels away the cloth to reveal a leather-bound volume. No title on the spine, no clasp or lock. Just a book, if one could call it that. Made of some hide not from any beast he's tanned. It's warm to the touch. Too warm. The air around it shifts as if the candlelight draws closer, bends toward it. Ellis narrows his eyes, tapping the surface gently. It breathes, not quite like a bellows, but more like the hush between two words about to be spoken. He hesitates, then opens it. The script is Latin, but not neatly formed. This is the sort of hand scribes used when they wanted to be clever or keep secrets. Serifed like little thorns, inked in something brown that smells vaguely like nutmeg and iron. The first page is blank, save for a single phrase. "Ardy me, listen to me." He does. Of course he does. At first, nothing, but then like someone speaking underwater, the words begin to form, not from the page, but from the spine of the book. It whispers. A slow trickle of syllables, precise and hushed, threading into Ellis's ears and refusing to leave. It says things no one should know, that the mallow in his drying rack is about to turn sour, that the dogwood outside will bloom early this year, that if he adds crushed caraway to his comfrey salve, it will soothe the joints of a man who's seen too many winters. It also mentions something about goat bile, which he chooses to ignore for now. Historians still argue whether whispered texts were truly mystical or just the product of isolation and mercury exposure. Given that the average medieval alchemist was half mad from lead inhalation and sleep deprivation, you can see the academic struggle. But Ellis? He knows exactly what he's hearing. The book is talking, and not just in Latin anymore. Sometimes in between ingredients and invocations, it speaks in rhymes he hasn't heard since childhood. His shop has seen many strange things. Once, a baron's son who bled honey. Another time, a travelling minstrel who carried a jar containing a live flame. But this book, this is different. Ellis experiments. He turns 3 pages forward, then closes his eyes. The whispering continues, but now it's naming flowers that haven't grown in this region for centuries. Some, not even he has heard of. There's a moment of comedy here, as Ellis sneezes violently. The pages must have been dusted in some aged pollen, and hits his head on the low beam above the reading bench. You'd think a seasoned apothecary would know better than to open a centuries-old volume directly under an oak lintel, but here we are. Still, bruised or not, he's captivated. That night, he dreams in pigment. Ochre rivers, blue smoke coiling from pots, and a tree bearing glass fruit filled with gold. When he wakes, the book is open to a recipe he's never seen before. Something involving yarrow root, apple skin, and a trace of bronze. The margins are illustrated with microscopic precision. One image shows a single drop of blood separating into 3 colors. One odd historical footnote. In 14th century England, many believed books could be enchanted by their bindings, especially if sewn with human sinew. It's possible that Ellis's tome has a bit of that. The stitching is tight, sinewy, and oddly pale. There's something else. When he sets the book on the shelf and turns to leave, it clicks. Not loudly, just a tiny tap, like it's annoyed. He glances back. The pages have flipped themselves to a new section, and just as he approaches, the candle beside it flares, revealing faint lettering, only visible at that exact moment. It reads, "This page is for you, only you. No one else will understand it." That's the kind of sentence you don't walk away from. Ellis sits, breathes, and listens. Outside, the rain thickens. A horse clatters past on the cobblestones, and someone curses at a cat. Inside the apothecary's shop, though, there is only the sound of breath, fire, and the soft cadence of the book that shouldn't speak. And Ellis, who perhaps, just perhaps, should not be listening. The spine creaks again, like the settling of a floorboard beneath velvet slippers, and the whispers begin anew. Ellis doesn't speak Latin fluently anymore. Once perhaps in a university long since swallowed by ivy and fire, he could recite the Ars Magna without stumbling. Now, he catches fragments. Aqua vitae dulcis radix cerebrum suum. He writes down what he can, but the quill slips in his fingers, ink dribbling into a blot that blooms like a bruise across the parchment. His hands have grown unsteady lately, stiff from decades of grinding mortar and chopping stems through the cold. He reaches for his elderflower cordial, made from the last batch before frost, and takes a sip. A warmth pools in his belly, but it's not from the drink. The book, laid before him, hums softly again. Only when he leans close, too close really, does the voice become coherent. It speaks not just ingredients but instructions, with an intonation like someone remembering a lullaby. The cadence is oddly soothing, calming, persuasive. Ellis, skeptical as ever, tests the first recipe. It's simple enough. Crushed sage, 2 drops of vinegar, a curl of birch bark, steeped in warmed mead. The book calls it tinctura oblivionis, a tincture of forgetting. He brews it the next morning, adding a touch of rosemary to be safe. The smell is earthy, familiar, faintly spicy. He places the steaming vial on the counter and waits. Raven's Hollow has many customers, but none like this morning's, a widow named Brana, eyes clouded with grief, whose husband had died only 6 weeks ago. "Do you have anything?" she asks, voice quivering, for silence. Ellis almost says no, but the book, maddeningly, shifts on the counter. He swears it vibrates, just enough to rustle the dried thyme hanging above it. He gives her the tincture. She drinks it without asking the name. 10 minutes later she is laughing. Not wildly, not unnaturally, just laughing. Ellis asks her how she feels. "I don't remember why I was sad," she says, voice light, "only that something once mattered, that unsettles him more than any howling beast ever could." He records everything in his worn ledger. Every dose, every response, including the moment Brainer returned 3 days later with a basket of turnips, and no recollection of ever buying anything from him. Historians still argue whether memory-altering tonics ever truly existed, or whether reports of them were confabulations, a mix of hysteria and the placebo effect. Some say monks in the Welsh mountains created such brews from blue hyssop and mushrooms that grew only after lightning storms. Others insist it was merely the result of ergot mold on rye bread. But Ellis now knows better. The book begins offering more elaborate concoctions, ones that require bloodroot, powdered bone, or even something the book calls a breath held too long beneath grief. That last ingredient leaves him genuinely puzzled. He assumes it's metaphorical. He doesn't sleep well that night. Dreams ripple through his mind like watercolors on wet parchment. He remembers his brother, long dead, long buried, but in the dream, the brother has no mouth, only a flickering flame where his lips should be, and behind him, pages flutter like wings. The next morning, Ellis finds that the pages of the Whispering Book have turned themselves again. This time, a recipe written not in ink, but embossed, like the letters had been pressed into the flesh of the page. He runs his fingers along them, and hears a whisper not in Latin, but in something older, Phoenician, maybe, or just nonsense shaped like memory. He doesn't copy this one down. Instead, he closes the book, wraps it tightly in 3 layers of cloth, and buries it beneath his floorboards. next to the dried sprigs of deadly nightshade he never uses. The kind of thing you keep just in case you forget you're capable of mistakes. For 3 days he avoids the book entirely. The whispers still reach him. Through the floor, through dreams, through the faint, sweet scent of anise that seems to cling to everything now. Then, on the 4th morning, he wakes to find it sitting neatly on the counter once again. He did not put it there. One fringe belief in early medieval medicine was that some texts were alively bound, a concept not quite sentient but not inanimate either. They were said to crawl, shift, or even hum when the moon waned. Most were burned by clerics. A few were buried with alchemists whose names were erased from guild records. Ellis checks the ledger. His notes from the days before are missing, not smudged, not torn, simply gone. He tests his own memory by reviewing a familiar recipe, his mother's old balm for fevers, but even that seems off. Now, the measurement's fuzzy, the scent wrong. The book has begun to reshape more than his work. It's reshaping him. He returns it to the shelf, this time surrounded by salt and iron tongs, a joke perhaps, or desperation. Still, the whispering doesn't stop. It only changes. Now it calls his name, softly, like the breeze through parchment. Ellis, and then again, lower this time, almost reverent. Ellis. He doesn't answer, but he doesn't leave either. Instead, he pulls up a stool, pours a fresh cup of mead, and says to the empty room, "Fine, let's hear it." The book opens itself. The air inside the apothecary thickens as the book unfolds again, not with the casual flutter of wind-blown parchment, but a precise, almost choreographed motion. Each page turns in slow arcs, one after another, as if inviting Ellis to follow a trail of breadcrumbs made from ink and intention. By the time the pages stop, the room feels warmer, not fire-warm, more like the kind of warmth that seeps in from memory, honeyed sunlight on old brick, or the ghost of laughter in a courtyard you haven't walked through in years. The new recipe spans both pages. It's titled Memoria Distorta, which roughly means twisted memory. Ellis frowns. The ingredients are elegant, poetic even, dried columbine petals, powdered hornbeam bark, a spoon of rainwater collected under a waxing moon, and peculiarly one line of verse recited aloud. He stares at that last line. Poetry as an ingredient, not unheard of, though usually reserved for spellcraft or bardic enchantments. But here it is, on a healing page, demanding both voice and intention. The book suggests a specific verse, written in the margin: "To forget with grace is to live twice." Ellis mutters it once, then again. The page warms beneath his hand. Intrigued but cautious, he assembles the tincture. His shelves are lined with jars labelled in a mix of Latin, Saxon, and personal shorthand. He finds the columbine, dried too long perhaps, but it will do. The hornbeam bark he scrapes fresh from a staff he carved himself long ago, back when his knees didn't pop like damp kindling. The rainwater he collects just before dawn, cupping his hands outside the window where the eaves drip slow and steady. The potion takes form in a clay bowl, swirling silver and lavender. It smells like dusted lavender and forgotten lullabies. Soft, too soft. He doesn't taste it. That would be madness. Instead, he waits for another visitor, as if summoned. A stranger appears that afternoon. She is cloaked, hooded and hesitant. Her name is Odela, and she speaks slowly, like someone afraid of hearing herself. "I forget," she says, wringing her hands. But not enough. "I want to forget. Better." Ellis hesitates. What exactly? Odela looks up. Her eyes are red-rimmed, her face gaunt, but there's something sharp in her gaze. The day he left. I want to forget the sound of it. The silence after. Ellis doesn't ask who. The book, resting half-shut nearby, seems to breathe in agreement. He gives her one measured vial, with instructions to drink it while facing west and reciting the line of verse under her breath. She pays in copper and rosemary, leaves without another word. The next day, she returns. Her eyes are brighter. Her posture is different. She smiles at a shelf of jars like they're old friends, but when Ellis greets her, she tilts her head. "Have we met?" He lies. "Only in passing." And she walks out humming. Quaint historical fact: during the 13th century, certain Germanic healers were forbidden by guild law to administer any treatment involving the alteration of memory due to fears it could unanchor the soul. Whether soul anchoring is something Ellis thinks about is another matter, but the phrase lingers. That night, he dreams of snow falling upward, of a glass mirror reflecting someone else's face. When he wakes, the page in the book has changed again, not just the ink. The very parchment is new, thicker, smoother, faintly perfumed. This page doesn't contain a recipe. It contains names. His name, written 3 times, and beneath it, a string of symbols he doesn't recognize, curved shapes that resemble musical notation more than letters. He traces them with his fingertip. The room tilts. He clutches the bench and shuts the book, breath-catching. That was no ordinary formula. Still shaken, he brings the tome to a local scholar the next day, a cranky monk named Father Jarek, who owes Ellis a favor after an unfortunate incident involving fermented turnips and a rash. Jarek peers at the symbols. He squints, mutters, and eventually sighs. "This isn't Latin," he says. "It's older. Phoenician, maybe, or Aramaic. Could be a cipher. Can you read it?" Jarek shrugs. "I can pretend." Ellis doesn't press him further, but as he leaves the abbey, he notices the way the monk watches the book like it might whisper to him too. It doesn't. It only hums when Ellis holds it. Fringe alchemical theories from the 1400s tell of resonant texts, books that would only activate for chosen readers, marked by birth or blood or madness. Some say these texts were part of a grander design, a hidden web of knowledge sewn across centuries by wandering scribes who shared dreams. Historians, of course, argue endlessly about this. Back at his shop, Ellis opens the book again. The symbols are gone. In their place, a new recipe, pulvis noctis, powder of the night. It requires only 3 ingredients: ashes from a letter never sent, a black feather that has never fallen, and the sigh of someone just waking. Well, that's not ominous at all. Ellis does not make this one. Not yet. But he collects the ashes. Just in case. He knows the book will wait. And whisper again. The sun creeps over the village of Raven's Hollow like it's been bribed to stay out of trouble. The cobblestones are slick with morning dew, and the scent of chamomile and coal fire hovers in the air like gossip. Ellis stands outside his shop, sleeves rolled, shovel in hand. Not a common sight for an apothecary. He's digging. Behind the shop lies a modest herb garden, feverfew, yarrow, angelica, all nestled under a patchwork of fog, but he isn't there for any of those. No, today he's after a root so rare and stubborn, it's more rumor than plant, devil's tooth. According to the Whispering Book, it grows where sorrow was once buried and forgotten, and the spot by the back fence. That's where the old dog was laid to rest, years ago. Ellis can't remember the dog's name. He suspects the book can. The soil is thick with old leaves and worms fat enough to write sonnets about. His knees ache, his hands protest. He digs anyway. After a half hour, his spade strikes something not root-like. Bone, not dog bone. Ellis freezes. He brushes away the dirt with a gentler hand, revealing a thin, almost child-sized femur, weathered smooth by years underground. Nearby, he uncovers a small coin, dulled by time but unmistakably minted. A symbol at its center, a hawk eating a serpent, triggers something strange in Ellis's memory. He's never seen it before, yet he knows this coin. A fringe historical curiosity during the reign of King Edrin the Pale, a king so thoroughly erased from common record that many believe he never existed. Some coins were minted with unnatural symbols. The hawk and serpent design is associated with only one known copy, held in the private collection of a certain baron in the north. A coin thought to be myth, until now. Ellis holds it up. It's warm. He glances back at the patch of turned soil and the bones, human, almost certainly, but not recently buried, likely hundreds of years old. He should report it to the church. That's protocol. But the book, resting open back inside the shop, is whispering louder now. No words, just sound, rhythmic and low, like the hush of waves inside a seashell. Back inside, he places the coin on the page. The book reacts, not dramatically. There's no flash or fire, just a quiet shift. The ink on the page reorders itself. Letters writhe, then settle into new instructions, a revised recipe. The devil's tooth root has been removed. In its place, Sinis Regis, ashes of a king. Ellis doesn't remember seeing any ashes. He checks the bone again just to be sure. Inside the marrow, dry and powdery after centuries, there is a dark dust, almost metallic in scent. He takes the tiniest scrape and places it in a glass vial marked with a question mark. His version of a shrug. When he adds the dust to the mixture he's been working on, a salve for lucid dreaming, the result is striking. The entire brew changes color, darkening from gold to violet, then clear. That night, he dreams again. This time it isn't abstract. He stands in a stone room lit by candles that never flicker. Before him sits a man with silver hair and eyes like wet ash. "You found it," the man says, not kindly. Ellis can't speak. His mouth is full of fog. "The book chose you," the man continues, "as it chose me. And before me, another, each of us thinking we were its master. Each of us proven wrong." The dream ends with Ellis falling backward through a library with no floor. Pages flutter all around him, but none can be read. When he wakes, the coin is gone, vanished from the workbench entirely. The vial is still there. So are the bones. He buries them again, out of respect, out of guilt, out of the quiet, gnawing certainty that he's stepped into something with its own rules. Historians still argue whether the burial sites of lost monarchs, especially those scrubbed from memory, carry a residual power. Some call it sanctity, others curse. A few fringe theorists suggest these sites act as memory anchors, locations where history reasserts itself if tampered with. Ellis wonders whether he has just untethered something. He locks the back door that night. Not that it will help. The next day, a traveling herbalist stops by, young, wild-haired, smelling of wet pine and nettle. She says she's from the Eastern Marches and hands him a folded note sealed with beeswax. It reads, "I know about the book. You're not the first. Meet me at the Standing Stones." She doesn't stay, just smiles, and walks on. The Standing Stones lie half a league outside the village, older than the church, older than the language spoken there now. They're covered in lichen and names no one alive remembers carving. Ellis doesn't go immediately. He brews a tea, first hibiscus and valerian, just to steady the nerves. Then he takes the book and the coinless vial, tucks both into his satchel, and steps out into the fog. The wind feels different now, not hostile, just aware. The road ahead winds through memory and moss, and somewhere beneath the soil, a coin hums softly in a grave no longer forgotten. The Standing Stones loom in the mist like molars in the mouth of a god. 12 of them form a loose circle, some leaning with age, others still unnaturally upright, as though the earth remembers why they were placed and refuses to let them fall. Ellis has not been here in years. Last time he came to gather lichen for poultices. Now the place hums in his bones. The whispering book is tucked beneath his arm, wrapped tightly in oilskin. The vial of bone dust ash rests in a padded pouch at his belt. And the herbalist? She is already waiting. She sits cross-legged atop the flattest stone, her boots dangling, a sprig of mug wort behind one ear. She smiles like someone who's seen your dreams and chosen not to mention them. "You came," she says. "I'm not in the habit of ignoring cryptic notes." She pats the stone beside her. Ellis doesn't climb up. His knees aren't built for symbolic perches anymore, but he stands close. "I'm Mira," she offers. "From the Eastern Marches, as advertised. You're Ellis, the apothecary. The book told me you'd be difficult." He stiffens slightly. "It speaks to you too?" "Of course. Not all the time. It's picky. But it knew you'd find that coin. It's been circling Raven's Hollow for generations, waiting for someone curious enough to listen, and foolish enough to brew the Memoria Distorter." Ellis frowns. "You knew about Odella? I saw the effect, not the act. People who take memory tinctures always hum afterward. Their minds try to fill the silence." She hops down from the stone and circles the standing ring slowly, fingers brushing each weathered surface. "These stones," she says, "were once used to anchor knowledge. Before ink, before parchment, they held memory, each one bound to a keeper. When that keeper died, The memory unraveled. Ellis raises a brow. You're not going to start claiming I'm some long-lost guardian of forgotten truths, are you? Mira laughs. You're not that special, Ellis. Just convenient. The book seeks stability, a quiet mind, someone who will listen but not command. You sit, sufficiently mild. He scowls, charming. She stops beside the southernmost stone. This one belonged to a monk named Harlan. He tried to copy the whispering book by hand. Didn't end well. By the 5th week, he was eating charcoal and reciting prayers backward. Ellis doesn't ask what happened after the 5th week. Why me, he mutters. I'm just a tired man with a leaky roof and an overactive pestle. You're more than that. You kept listening. Mira opens her satchel and removes a bundle wrapped in saffron-dyed linen. Inside is another book, smaller, older, with corners burned and stitched back together with gold thread. My mother's, she says. Her book whispered too, but not in Latin. Hers sang. Sang, Mira nods. In plain song, always in threes. She said it was how the dead remembered, a curious footnote in early liturgical manuscripts. Some monastic orders believed chants could transfer not only praise but memory, particularly the Benedictine monks of Cluny Abbey, who developed elaborate sequences said to bind certain knowledge in melodic form. Fringe theories suggest these chants echoed properties of proto-alchemical resonance patterns. Ellis steps closer. What happened to her? She forgot who she was. Completely. One morning she made tea and introduced herself to the kettle. Said it seemed like a kind companion. Ellis flinches, because that sounds far too familiar. Mira closes the small book and wraps it again. The whispering book isn't just alchemy, it's accumulation. It remembers too much, and eventually so do you. That's the price. You begin to forget yourself. A long silence stretches between them. Crows call in the distance. The wind shifts. So what am I supposed to do? Ellis asks. Burn it? She gives him a wry smile. It wouldn't let you. It's very flammable, but oddly defiant. She approaches him now, slowly, and reaches for the book still wrapped in oilskin beneath his arm. May I? He hesitates, then hands it over. She holds it delicately, as if the weight of it might suddenly shift. Then she unwraps it. The moment it breathes open, the air inside the stone circle changes. Pressure builds behind Ellis's ears. The grass lies flat. One of the stones cracks faintly, not broken, just reminded. The book speaks. Not in Latin this time, not even in sound. The whispering is internal now, threading through his ribs like wind through harp strings. Mira doesn't flinch. Her lips move slightly, as if reciting something she learned long ago. Ellis hears something else entirely. He hears his mother's voice, soft, fragrant with cinnamon, and the creak of her stool as she ground thyme into cough syrup. He hears his brother singing drunkenly during Beltane. He hears a child's laughter, his own, echoing through corridors no longer standing. Then the book closes itself. Mira exhales. It's choosing again. She hands it back. You'll need to go deeper. It's not finished with you. Deeper where? She gestures around. There's a vault beneath the northern field, built by scribes who couldn't write anymore. You'll know it when you feel the ground disagree with your footsteps. Ellis sighs, cradling the book like a sleeping cat. Wonderful. Do I need a torch? A ceremonial goat? Anything else on the shopping list? Just your memory, Mira says, while you still have it. They part at dusk. Mira walks toward the woods, not looking back. Ellis, heavier now, with knowledge and a book that hums like a lullaby, returns to Raven's Hollow. That night, he lights a candle. It hums back at him. The page is blank, but he knows what to do next. At dawn, Ellis steps into his apothecary like he's trespassing in his own life. The book rests on his workbench, still and shut, yet somehow the air feels charged, like a room that's just been wept in. He spends the morning pretending things are normal, measures out fennel seeds, replaces a warped shelf plank, pours a weak ginger tonic for a passing merchant with too much coin and too little patience. But the book watches him. It doesn't move, yet its presence vibrates just under his thoughts. By late afternoon, he gives in. He places the book on a clean cloth, lights a beeswax candle, just one, and waits. And that's when the knock comes. 3 short raps on the front door, then silence. Ellis opens it to find a child, a mute child. The boy is maybe 8, maybe 10, with soot-smudged cheeks and eyes too wide for someone that small. No shoes. He holds out a feather, jet black, tied at the quill with silver twine. Ellis looks from the feather to the boy. For me? The boy nods once. Who sent you? A shrug. Ellis squints. There's something strange about the feather. It isn't from any bird he recognizes. Raven, maybe, but longer, sleeker. When he takes it, it's warm. Before Ellis can ask more, the boy turns and walks away, barefoot on the cobbles like they're moss. He never looks back. Inside, the candle flickers. The book opens by itself. New page, new formula. Tinctura somniloqui. A tincture for speaking while asleep. That's not a thing, Ellis thinks. Sleep-talking isn't curable, much less inducible. Still, he reads. 3 drops of dream oil. A feather from one born beneath silence. Crushed fig seed. And most curious, the memory of a sound that never existed. Honestly, it reads like poetry written by someone who forgot how to lie. But dream oil? That's real. Historical fact, in parts of the medieval Mediterranean, oil infused with crushed lavender, poppy seeds and elderflower was believed to draw out dreams like venom, called oleum somniorum. It was rubbed into the temples before sleep. The trick? You had to boil it during the twilight hour, neither day nor night. Otherwise, the dreams turned hostile. Ellis has made dream oil before, but never like this. He gathers ingredients. Lavender from last month's harvest, poppy from the sealed tin behind the false wall panel, and elderflower still hanging to dry above the window. He sets the pot to warm, stirs counterclockwise. The feather he adds whole. The liquid turns a deep sapphire. Then comes the impossible part, a sound that never existed. He laughs, tiredly. You'll have to be more specific. The page shifts, as if responding. In the corner now appears a small inked symbol, a stylized bell with no clapper, a sound that cannot be rung. He gets it, sort of. He thinks of his father's voice, an imagined thing since the man died before Ellis was old enough to remember. What did he sound like? Kind? Gruff? Was he the type to laugh at thunderstorms? Ellis pours that uncertainty, his imagined sound, into the vial. The liquid doesn't react, but the candle hums. He takes it as a sign. He doesn't drink the tincture himself. Not yet. First he places a few drops onto a linen cloth and tucks it under his pillow. That night, he dreams of a field made entirely of windows. He walks between them, barefoot, watching memories through each pane, some his, some not. One shows Mira young and furious, shouting at a robed man with no face. Another shows Ellis himself, older, far older, mixing something by moonlight with hands that tremble like leaves. He tries to speak, but no voice comes. When he wakes, the cloth under his pillow is dry. The book lies open beside him. It has written something in his own handwriting. I have begun to remember your dreams. He doesn't recall writing that. Then something stranger, a bird, perched on the rafter above the hearth, black, long-feathered with obsidian eyes that reflect nothing. It stares. Ellis stares back. He raises the book slowly. The bird watches every motion. When he turns a page, it flutters its wings, just once, and emits a single chirp that sounds disturbingly like a flute note. Then it flies, not out the window, but through the back wall. Through it. Ellis doesn't bother checking for a hole. He knows what he saw. Fringe lore from Eastern Europe tells of dream birds, creatures that appear only when the veil between sleep and waking is too thin, said to be messengers of the subconscious. They often deliver omens to alchemists, poets, and the mentally frayed. Most who saw them were dismissed as dream-touched, or worse, inspired. That day, Ellis bottles the rest of the tincture, labels it carefully, puts it on the highest shelf, away from prying eyes and low thoughts. The book doesn't whisper for 2 days, just rests. And yet, the candle continues to hum whenever he lights it, quiet and low, like a memory you've stopped trying to forget. By the 3rd morning, the quiet has grown louder than any whisper. Ellis wakes to the unsettling comfort of silence. No spine creaks, no whispering ink. The whispering book sits closed and complacent on the workbench, as though it never breathed a word. He waits for the usual signs, pages rustling with no breeze, the candle humming, but nothing. Even the ever-present scent of anise seems to have fled. He doesn't trust it. After breakfast, bread slightly stale, goat cheese aggressively tangy, he decides to sweep out the hearth, not for tidiness, just to do something. The broom brushes out soot and scorched herb stems, the occasional cracked bone chip from past tinctures. As he leans in to pull out a charred log end, something odd happens. The hearth coughs. Not a sound, not shrilly, but a twitch in the ash, and from beneath the grey-black layer of last week's fire, a bit of paper unfurls itself like a burnt tongue curling back into speech. Ellis blinks, then carefully plucks it out with tongs. It's half a letter. The edges are crisped, flaking to the touch, but the ink in the center remains strangely untouched by flame. The script is familiar. He reads it once, then again, because it's his handwriting. But he's never written it. My dearest Aaron, if you find this, it means I have failed to unbind the book. I tried fire, I tried salt, I tried forgetting. It remembers everything, including you. I've sealed away the worst of it in the northern vault, but you must not read what's been locked. You'll know the door by the way it tries to forget you. The letter ends there, cut off, as if it had more to say, but the fire took it. Ellis stares at the page for a long while, the name pulsing like a splinter in his memory. Arin, a name he hasn't heard in years, a name that means something, but he doesn't know what. The whispering book remains closed, smug somehow. Ellis tucks the half-letter into a drawer, beside a vial of mouldy rose oil and a dried frog tongue he refuses to explain. He doesn't like coincidences, and this feels premeditated. He visits the oldest shelf in the shop, the one even the spiders have politely vacated. There, wrapped in linen and a little dust, is a stack of journals. His journals, decades of them. He flips through the most recent. No mention of Arin, none. The oldest, however, hand-bound and smelling of old time, mentions the name several times, always in passing, always warm. Sometimes as a footnote, Arin likes the smell of clove. Once, Arin's laugh could stir even that cursed myrrh tonic into bloom. Ellis stares at the page until the ink seems to blur. He knew this person, loved them maybe, and now, nothing. The whispering book, perhaps out of guilt or mockery, chooses that moment to open itself. The page is already turned to a new recipe. Elixir revinctus, the binding elixir, ingredients, sap from a tree struck by lightning, the spoken name of a forgotten friend, and a single tear from the one who cannot remember. Really, the book has a sense of drama. Fringe alchemical belief from the Bohemian valleys claimed that true binding elixirs could stitch emotional bonds as well as physical ones. Many apothecaries mocked the idea, too romantic, too soft, but a few whispered that certain formulas could repair what memory erased. If brewed at great personal cost, Ellis already knows which ingredient will be hardest. He doesn't remember Arin, not really, not in the way that counts, but the tear, that comes anyway. A quiet one. Just one. He adds it to a tiny flask with the reverence of someone making tea for a ghost. As for the lightning-struck sap, he knows where to find it. Just past the old mill stands a crooked ash tree, scorched down its center from a summer storm 2 years ago. He collects the sap slowly, whispering apologies to the bark. The final ingredient, the spoken name of a forgotten friend, he improvises. He speaks the name Arin aloud. Once, then again, the wind picks up. Back in the shop, the elixir shifts from clear to rose gold, warm to the touch. The scent is strange, lavender, but reversed, if that makes sense. Like something floral whispered backwards. He doesn't drink it. Instead, he uncorks it beside the book. The ink on the page bleeds into itself. Letters unwrite. Symbols shiver, dissolve, and for a moment just one stilled and sacred. Ellis hears the name Arin not in his own voice, but in someone else's, soft, laughing. calling his name from the other room. And then it fades. He opens the drawer again. The half-burned letter is gone. In its place, a pressed clove. Historians still argue whether alchemical memory treatments actually altered the past or merely dulled its edges. Some suggest they left memory fingerprints, small signs in the physical world that something once mattered deeply. Ellis keeps the clove. He places it gently on a dish by the window. He does not speak Erin's name again that night. But he does light a candle. It doesn't hum, it sings. A day passes. Then two. Ellis doesn't brew, doesn't grind, or weigh, or stir. He just listens. The whispering book has gone quiet again. Not the eerie, motionless silence of before, but a contented hush, like a cat purring in its sleep. He keeps it on the workbench now, uncovered, spine up, as though it's earned the right to rest in the open. On the third morning, the bell above the apothecary door rings. A woman steps in, tall and travel-worn, her boots caked in red dust that doesn't come from any road near Raven's Hollow. Her hood is pulled low, but Ellis can smell the juniper and pine needles on her coat. Easton marches again. She doesn't speak until the door swings shut behind her. "You're Ellis." "Yes," he says carefully, brushing crumbs from his sleeve. "And you are." She removes her hood. Her hair is braided back tight, silver rings woven between the plaits like charms. Her left eye is cloudy, scarred. Her right eye is sharp as a flint knife. "Call me Lyra. I'm here about the pact." Ellis raises an eyebrow. "I didn't know I was part of any pact." "You are now," she replies, stepping closer. "Mira told me you brewed Elixir Revinctus. No one's done that in 3 generations." Ellis leans back against the bench. "Didn't know there was a scoreboard." Lyra ignores the comment. She unfastens her pack and pulls out a scroll bound in waxed flax. "The Dandelion Pact," she says, unfurling it. "A compact between Eastern and Western alchemists, established during the Year of 2 Winters. A documented, if mildly disputed, event in 1321 when a freak seasonal inversion caused 2 winters to fall back-to-back across Europe, collapsing crops and accelerating folk reliance on non-traditional medicine. The Dandelion Pact, if it existed, was rumoured to be a joint effort among hedge witches, alchemists, and forest apothecaries to preserve knowledge and create treatments using adaptable, fast-growing herbs like dandelion. Lyra points to a section on the scroll. Article 6, she reads, declares that any bearer of the Whispering Book shall be offered 1 opportunity to brew the unsettling cure. Ellis reads over her shoulder. The handwriting is tight, precise, likely scribed by a half-mad monk with excellent ink discipline. But the words, they spark something. "Unsettling cure," he echoes. "It doesn't heal the body," Lyra explains. "It heals what was misunderstood, broken relationships, misread omens, regrets too old to unpack. And it actually works." Lyra gives him a look that says, "What do you think?" Then she pulls a small cloth pouch from her belt. She unties it and spills the contents onto the workbench. 6 dandelion heads, each one perfectly preserved, seeds intact, white and soft, unmoving, despite the open window's breeze. "These are the last," she says, "from the original rootstock grown by pact founders. The cure requires 3. Ellis peers at them. "What happens if I fail?" "Then you still have 3 dandelions," she says, deadpan, "and someone else will try in another 100 years. He picks up one of the heads. The stem is brittle, but the tuft is impossibly soft. He sets it gently in a brass dish. The book opens. No spine creak, no fanfare, just a gentle rustle. The page smells faintly of mint and lemon balm. Curatio Inquieta, the unsettling cure, ingredients. 3 preserved dandelion heads from packed rootstock, oil pressed from regret, don't ask how. A word unspoken at the right time, vapor of night's last hour. Ellis sighs. "You couldn't have mentioned that last part earlier." Lyra shrugs. "If it were easy, we wouldn't need a pact." They begin at twilight. For the oil pressed from regret, Ellis offers a carved wooden heart, something he made decades ago, never gave away. He grinds it down slowly in a press until the shavings weep amber oil. The word unspoken is harder. He writes letters. all the ones he never sent, to Orin, to his brother, to his mother. He doesn't read them, just burns the pages and collects the ash. The book absorbs the smoke like breath. Then comes the night's last hour. It's trickier than it sounds. You can't bottle time, not really, but Ellis knows a trick. He places a mirror in the garden under the moon surrounded by salt. He waits until the first bird stirs, then captures the fog that rests on the mirror's surface using a thin silk cloth. That mist, that's the hour dissolving. He returns to the apothecary and adds the final element. The mixture turns white, then blue, then utterly clear. When it stills, it glows, like memory seen from a great distance. Lyra watches silently, her good eye reflecting the light. Now comes the test. She produces a sealed glass vial, something she's carried this entire time. Inside is a lock of hair and a smudge of blood. "My sister," she says. "We haven't spoken in 30 years. I want to remember why." Ellis doesn't ask more. He adds the contents to the vial, then hands it to her. She drinks and cries. Not loudly, not in pain, just a slow unraveling. Her hands tremble, her lips twitch with half-formed words. Then clarity. "She used to braid my hair with cornflower ribbons." Lyra whispers, "I forgot that. I didn't know I'd forgotten." She looks at Ellis, and for a moment she's just a woman holding the ghost of a memory restored. It worked. The whispering book closes softly. Ellis takes the last 3 dandelion heads and places them in a jar lined with crushed moonwort, just in case. Historians still debate whether the dandelion pact ever produced lasting cures or merely encouraged poetic apothecary work. But if you've ever remembered something you thought lost and found it healed instead of hurting, you might not care. Ellis doesn't. He lights a candle. It hums again. The next morning arrives with a bruised sky, grey and swollen, the kind of cloud cover that makes you forget what time it is. Raven's Hollow is unusually quiet. Even the butcher's dog, who normally performs his sunrise opera with unnecessary drama, has gone silent. Ellis wakes to tapping, not on the window, on the roof. It's measured, rhythmic, tapping like an impatient mathematician's fingers on slate. He rolls out of bed, joints cracking like old floorboards, and grabs his robe. As he reaches the back door, he notices something odd. The whispering book is already open on the bench. He didn't open it. Not consciously, anyway. The page is covered in symbols, alchemical glyphs, planetary signs, and a grid of tiny dots connected by thin red lines. A triangle, then a spiral, then what looks suspiciously like bird tracks. And then comes the tapping again. He opens the door and looks up. There, perched on the sloped wooden shingles of his roof, is a crow, but not just any crow. This one has eyes the color of obsidian, smooth, mirror-like, too reflective. It stares at him with unnerving stillness, then taps the roof tile 3 more times with its beak. Tap, tap, tap. Ellis squints. The pattern. It matches the one on the book's page. He doesn't believe in coincidence anymore. Crows, of course, are old symbols, messengers, scavengers, tricksters. In alchemical texts, they represent Negrorido, the blackening stage of transformation, the death of old knowledge to prepare for the new. Appropriate, considering the things Ellis has chosen to forget recently. He watches the crow hop along the roof's edge. It pecks at a mossy spot near the chimney and lets out a low, guttural caw, not the usual screech. This one is tonal, musical. The crow turns its head sharply, as if waiting, then hops down to a low beam and pecks. Once, twice on a wooden corbel above the herb-drying rack. A small panel pops open. Ellis blinks. That has never happened before. Inside is a roll of parchment. He retrieves it slowly, as if the wood might bite his fingers. The paper is brittle but intact. Unrolling it reveals a chart of equations drawn in looping ink, smudged in places but still readable. They are alchemical, but not recipes. These are equations, layered with symbols indicating time, motion, and intent. One fringe theory among Renaissance alchemists suggested that alchemical formulas weren't just recipes, but equations for influence. Applied correctly, they could alter not just matter, but memory, language, and even consequence itself. These were referred to as causatic formulae, potions not of healing or harm, but of intervention. And here they were, or fragments at least. Ellis recognizes one, the crow's equation. He spreads the parchment out beside the whispering book. It seems to hum, not audibly, but with a pressure that tickles behind the eyes. The symbols begin to align. One of the triangular glyphs in the book pulses slightly, aligning itself with a spiral on the scroll. A thin red thread of ink seeps from the edge of the book onto the parchment. Cheating, Ellis murmurs. Of course, the crow taps again, now on the windowsill. Ellis steps over and opens it fully. The bird flies in, lands on the edge of the bench, and drops a small object, a pebble, black, smooth, perfectly round. He picks it up, warm, humming faintly. The crow cocks its head, then caws once, high-pitched, and flies out again. Ellis sets the pebble next to the book and the scroll. The three items begin to resonate, like tuning forks struck softly at once. The candle beside them flickers, not randomly, but in sequence. A pulse, then a pause, then another pulse. Like code, Ellis writes it down. He spends the better part of the day working out the rest of the equation. It involves not just ingredients, but movement, exact stirring patterns, timed incantations, lunar alignment, and emotional state. The potion requires more than material. It demands intention. And at its heart, it seems to suggest this: if brewed correctly, it can alter not what happened, but how it was understood. He thinks of Aaron. He thinks of Mira's sister. He thinks of the widow, Brenna, who forgot sadness, but also forgot why joy mattered. The equation frightens him and fascinates him. He begins to gather what he needs. Mandrake root, twisted and still faintly pulsing with energy. Wormwood, aged precisely 12 months. Calcined silver and bloodstone, ground into fine dust. He draws the crow's equation into a shallow bowl of water with the tip of a glass rod. The ink doesn't run. The water begins to spin, slowly, then faster. Then it stops entirely, mid-whirl, as if time hiccuped. The book flips to a new page. One word is written in the center: try. Historians still argue whether alchemists ever developed actual math-based spellwork, or whether these were poetic musings, elevated by later interpreters with too much parchment and not enough skepticism. The idea that memory, emotion, and chemistry could be plotted with numbers has been dismissed as wishful allegory, but Ellis knows better. He tries. He adds the first ingredient, stirs clockwise, recites the line from the equation. The liquid darkens. The bench creaks, although he hasn't moved. Then, a whisper, not from the book, from himself, not aloud, but in his mind. His own voice, saying something he's never said before: forgive me. He drops the pebble into the mixture. The potion clears. Ellis stares at it. He doesn't drink it, yet, but he keeps it close, just in case. The next evening brings fog, not the light, whimsical sort that drifts like lazy dancers across rooftops, but the kind that presses in on windows and swallows street sounds whole. Raven's Hollow vanishes behind it. The church bell is muffled. Even the ravens seem reluctant to speak. Ellis stands behind his counter, polishing a glass bottle that doesn't need polishing. His hands move automatically, the cloth squeaking in that soft, repetitive way that does more for his nerves than the bottle. He hasn't brewed anything since the crow's equation. That vial still sits corked on the shelf, glowing faintly in the dark. Then the door creaks open. A man stumbles in, or maybe he's being held upright by sheer effort and a very good coat. Mud cakes his boots. His hands tremble. But what Ellis notices most is what he's holding: a bottle of mercury. Don't suppose, the man wheezes, you'd like to trade for something unwise. Ellis lowers the cloth. Depends on how unwise. The man's eyes glint strangely. This was found under a collapsed observatory. The monks called it argentum luci, lighted silver, but it's not normal. It sings. Ellis blinks. Mercury doesn't sing. Oh, it does when you boil it, the man says, setting the bottle down. The mercury sloshes thickly, too thickly, and glows faintly with a sheen not unlike moonlight. Ellis leans closer. It's beautiful and deeply wrong. Mercury, quicksilver, has always been an alchemical staple, representing change, transmutation, and the elusive essence of the soul. The Romans believed it connected the world of the living with the underworld. But this gleamed like it had absorbed not just light but history. He takes the bottle, gently swirling it. "You boiled this," he asks. "Not I," the man mutters. "The observatory did. After it burned." Ellis raises an eyebrow. "Right," he says. "Obviously." He trades the man a handful of poppy syrup and a powdered clove sleeping blend. The man drinks half the syrup before reaching the door. "Beware that mercury," he calls back. It remembers what it reflects. Then he vanishes into the fog. Ellis turns back to the whispering book. It's already flipped to a page titled Argentum Risus, the laughing silver, a formula involving 1 dram of enlightened mercury, powdered mirror glass, no younger than a decade, hair from a person who has never lied, a smile that has never been returned. Ellis grimaces. "Oh, easy. I'll just pop down to the market and grab someone honest." But he knows better than to scoff. The book doesn't deal in metaphor by accident. He begins with what he has. The mercury pours reluctantly, clinging to the bottle like it doesn't want to leave. When it lands in the crucible, it hums, a low note, like a tuning fork hit gently against regret. For the mirror glass, he fetches a shard from the old vanity behind the herb cupboard, the one cracked by frost years ago, the one Aaron used to glance in while adjusting his collar. Funny how something so ordinary becomes holy in hindsight. He grinds the shard carefully. "For the hair," he falters. "Who hasn't lied?" Then he remembers the mute boy, the one who brought the feather. He finds one of the boy's footprints still pressed in the dry dirt outside the door, a single black hair caught on a splinter of the threshold. Wind blown likely, but still there. Ellis adds it, hand trembling. Now the final piece, a smile that has never been returned. He thinks, really thinks, and finally he remembers one, his own, directed years ago at the portrait maker who passed through the village one summer, a beautiful man with stained fingers and an easy laugh. Ellis had smiled. The man hadn't looked up. That moment is his last ingredient. He exhales slowly, then releases that memory aloud like an offering. The mixture flashes gold, then silver, then clear again, with a faint spiral of color at the center that twists and untwists itself like smoke deciding whether to become cloud or shadow. Ellis dips a spoon, tastes nothing, but the room tilts. He sees himself in the mirror shard, older, yes, but eyes brighter, posture straighter. Then he hears the laughter. Not cruel, not mocking, just laughter, familiar and echoing, and the mercury, it hums again, a different note now, higher, brighter, like the chime of bells at midwinter. He blinks. The whispering book has closed, but the candle is burning backward, the wax unmalting, the wick lengthening. Time, just for a moment, is slipping. Historians still argue whether the alchemical concept of backward fire, a flame that reversed entropy, ever existed. Some claim it was a metaphor for restorative healing. Others say it was a literal flame, harnessed only during eclipses, and used to burn sorrow into joy. Ellis doesn't argue, he just watches. The flame rewinds, and when it stops, the vial of laughing silver is sealed and still, the mercury quiet. But Ellis's reflection in the mirror shard, it's smiling. Not because it was told to, because it remembered how. It's the middle of the night when Ellis wakes to a fluttering sound, light, irregular like moth wings beating against vellum. He sits up in bed, blinking against the soft glow seeping from beneath the door to the workshop. He didn't leave a candle burning. The sound grows louder, not quite wings, not quite pages. He opens the door slowly. The whispering book is open again, but something's different. A single page tears itself from the spine, floats upward, and begins to mend itself. Not a metaphor. The torn corner Ellis accidentally burned weeks ago during a botched fever remedy is no longer missing. The edge regrows like bark over a scar, fibers weaving back together until the sheet is whole again. He watches, stunned, as ink begins to bloom, like time-lapsed lichen, across the surface. Latin script, fine and steady, a recipe. He steps closer, cautious. The heading reads, Velum Vivintem, the living page. It details a preparation involving 3 drops of candle wax from a forgotten vigil, powdered lapis lazuli, a lock of hair from the recipe's original author, and a feather quill never used to write. There's a note at the bottom, not in Latin, but in his own script. You will not remember writing this, but you must still follow it. That's becoming a theme. Ellis paces the room. Books don't heal. Pages don't regrow. But here it is, a rejuvenated sheet of parchment, whole and breathing. Historical fact. In the 14th century, some scribes believed vellum taken from stillborn calves had spiritual resonance. They called it silent skin. Texts written on such vellum were said to never fade, and occasionally, if penned with proper blood and intention, to rewrite themselves. Fringe tales tell of auto-codices, living books that could repair, erase, and rewrite depending on the reader's memory, thought to be myth. Until now, Ellis begins gathering materials. The candle wax is easiest. He keeps old stubs in a drawer, memorial vigils lit during village crises, forgotten but never discarded. One stub bears the initials of a boy who vanished in the woods 2 decades ago. He uses that one. The lapis lazuli he finds in a chipped mortar, ground down from old jewelry donated by a widowed miller who insisted it helped ward off ungrateful ghosts. He has no idea how to find the author's hair, unless he remembers the note. You won't remember writing this. What if the original author was him? He sighs, then snips a strand of his own hair, silver at the roots, brittle with age. The final ingredient, a quill never used for writing. Ellis digs through drawers, past ink-stained nibs and chewed reed pens, until he finds it, a feather from a rook, wrapped in twine and tucked beside a dried apple slice. He assembles everything in his copper bowl, stirs gently, chants the Latin printed at the top of the page, words he does not fully understand. The mixture begins to glow, not brightly, but with a pulse like a distant heartbeat. He dips a clean brush in it and coats the entire page. The ink fades, then returns stronger, bolder, and then the book flips itself shut. When Ellis opens it again, all the previously damaged pages have been restored. Some he hadn't realized were torn. New ones have appeared too, blank, but warm to the touch. Breathing, waiting. He stares. Then something flickers in his peripheral vision. The candle next to the book has shifted, no longer burning downward, but holding steady. Its wax pool frozen in time. He tests it. No drip. He waves a hand over the flame. It dances but doesn't sway. Time has stilled here. Only in this corner of the room. He looks at the book again. A fresh phrase has written itself across the newly healed vellum. You have earned more pages. He shivers. Outside, the wind picks up. The shutters rattle softly. He stows the remaining mixture in a sealed flask and scribbles notes in his ledger. But when he looks back, the new pages are gone. Not vanished, just filled. Lines of tiny script now coat the previously blank leaves, too small to read without a magnifying glass. He fetches one from his desk. As he peers through the lens, the text swims and reconfigures, adjusting to his gaze. It doesn't just show the recipe, it answers his questions. He blinks and tests it. How do I reverse a memory tincture? He mutters aloud. The page flashes. A footnote forms at the bottom. Reverse the intention. Use bitterness in place of sweet. Speak the name backward. Ellis exhales sharply. It isn't a book anymore. Not really. It's becoming something else. Somewhere between a mirror and a mentor. Historians still debate whether texts could evolve, if a manuscript could become more than the sum of its ink and hide. A living codex has never been confirmed, though fragments of the Book of the Eight Winds hint at pages that shifted to reflect the reader's fears. Ellis now knows it's not just the book that's alive, it's learning and possibly remembering for him. He closes it, gently, binds it with silk cord. Not from fear, but from respect.
Sleep then, he murmurs, if you do that sort of thing.
And the candle goes out. All by itself. Rain laces down the window panes in delicate ribbons. The fire in Ellis's hearth crackles softly, its glow casting long amber shadows across jars of dried marigold, valerian root and licorice bark. For once the shop feels still, not ominously, but in a way that says the world is taking a long, contented breath. He's brewing something simple today, a seasonal salve for cracked hands. No memory tampering, no sentient ingredients, no time-bending echoes, just beeswax, lavender oil, and a touch of pine resin, something honest. But even in the quiet, the book waits. It sits on the bench like a cat pretending not to eavesdrop, wrapped in linen, but Ellis still swears he hears the occasional creak from its spine, not words, not quite. He's just pouring the salve into little glass jars when the flame on the hearth flickers strangely, then hums, a low humming sound, not quite a note, not quite vibration, emerges from the candle nearby, the same beeswax candle he lit absent-mindedly just after breakfast, the same one that sat in that brass dish for 2 years without ever doing more than smell vaguely of almonds. Now it hums, soft and steady. Ellis freezes. The whispering book opens by itself. One page turns, then another, then stops. He steps over and looks down. Candela resonantia, the resonant flame. It details a recipe and ritual for a flame that can reveal invisible texts, masked enchantments, and lingering thoughts. A revealing fire, powered not by heat, but by harmony. The ingredients listed are as peculiar as they are poetic. Wax from a candle lit by morning hands, 1 drop of oil rendered from a blessed fig, a wick braided under starlight, and an utterance never spoken aloud. Fringe lore surrounding medieval monastic scriptoriums tells of singing candles used during solstice rituals to read prayers too sacred for light. The flame wouldn't illuminate letters, it would resonate with them. Those few who heard the hum often claimed they understood the text without ever needing to read it. Ellis, curious and admittedly restless, decides to try. He gathers the wax from a candle stub left behind by an old widower who used to light one each year on his late wife's birthday. The wax, greyish and dusty, smells faintly of myrrh and sorrow. The fig oil proves harder. He remembers a small blessed fig tree behind the church, kept alive by miracle or stubbornness. He barters with the groundskeeper for 1 fig in exchange for 2 jars of poultice and a promise not to ask questions. That night, under the clearest sky Raven's Hollow has seen in weeks, he braids a new wick with the thinnest linen thread he owns. He mutters the old names as he weaves, 3 gods no one prays to anymore, and a curse he learned by accident in his 3rd year as an apprentice. The utterance, that comes last. He thinks of the thing he's never said, the truth he swallowed long ago. I stayed because I was afraid to be more than useful. He whispers it once, just once. The flame takes with a hiss. It doesn't burn yellow, or blue, or white. It burns in colour, not a flame of colour, but a flame containing all of them, like looking at a drop of oil in water, refracting light into things it should not be able to see. The whispering book rustles, then the walls rustle, shelf labels shimmer, glass jars catch motes of sound, and on the very edge of the workbench, a stack of old pages, ones Ellis's thought was blank, begin to bleed ink. Slowly, beautifully, as though remembering they were meant to say something. He watches. 1 page reveals a recipe for a memory of a scent. Another displays a list of names, none familiar, but one dated 300 years into the future. Another simply reads, "Not yet. Close." The candle continues to hum, its flame pulsing like a heartbeat. And in that sound, Ellis hears words he doesn't know in any language, but somehow understands: longing, grief, curiosity, affection, time. He doesn't take notes, he just listens. The candle burns without shortening. The wax doesn't melt, it sings. And every so often the whispering book turns another page, revealing something new, not from history, but from Ellis's own timeline, things he hasn't lived yet, decisions not made, apologies not given. At one point he sees Aren's name again, and a date, 4 days from now. He doesn't ask. He just keeps listening. Historians still argue whether sacred candles ever truly contained intelligence, or whether monks and mystics simply projected their hopes onto the flame. Some describe flame resonance as an early form of synesthesia, while others insist it's just what happens when grief and intention share a wick. Ellis, naturally, disagrees. The flame on his workbench is humming a tune his mother once used to hum while pickling onions. He remembers it now, clearly, as though it never left. He sits by the candle well into the night. The salve jars are long cooled. The shop sleeps around him. Only the flame hums on, steady and true. The sun rises without ceremony. No trumpet of birdsong, no glowing skies, just light, pale and indifferent, seeping through the warped shutters. Ellis doesn't move from his seat by the still humming candle. He's been there all night, hunched slightly, eyes red but unblinking. The whispering book lies open before him. Its pages have gone still. The flame, finally, has ceased its song, though the room still carries a faint after-hum, like the memory of music. He stands, stretches, each joint protesting like a rusted hinge, and moves toward the door for air. But something's off. The air outside is still. Still, in a way it shouldn't be. No cartwheels, no blacksmith hammer, no clatter from the bakery. He steps into the street and sees it. Raven's Hollow has forgotten its name. It's not written above the tavern door where it's been carved for decades. Not on the post near the well, which usually reads Raven's Hollow 1 league to Wormbridge. The lettering is gone, not scraped, not weathered, just blank wood. Even stranger, the people outside walk as if nothing is amiss. A neighbour waves, a child chases a hoop, the baker whistles a tune. Everything seems normal, except no one says where they are. Ellis walks to the market. The stalls are full, goods are traded, but when he asks a stallkeeper where he seps from, the man blinks and replies, "From here, of course. Where seps here?" The man frowns. Why it seps? He trails off. He then changes the subject. Ellis returns to the shop with a growing unease in his bones. Inside, the whispering book is waiting. The page it now shows reads, Experiment 9, Mnemo's Dissolvenda, the dissolution of place memory. The recipe is familiar. It's his, or at least, it's in his handwriting, dated 3 weeks ago. Effects: localized amnesia of fixed name locations, duration 3 hours, range unclear, antidote, sound anchor, plus aromatic trigger. He doesn't remember making this. Not exactly, but the notes include a variant of the unspoken smile tincture from the crow's equation. He double-checks the recipe. Yes, it's his. He must have brewed it during one of the book's silent spells. Or, worse, the book brewed it through him. The antidote listed is strangely specific. Burnt clove oil. The town bell rung in its original frequency. And one spoken phrase, "We are where we have always been." Simple enough. If you have a spare clove and access to a bell tower, Ellis does both. He places a dish over flame, adds clove oil and a shred of parchment, lets the smoke curl out through the open window. Then he walks to the chapel, nudging the bell rope with the toe of his boot. The chime rings out across the rooftops, clear and cold, like glass struck by truth. He returns to the shop, stands in the doorway, and recites the phrase, "We are where we have always been." Outside, a pause. Then, like water returning to a dry channel, something snaps back into place. The signage reappears. The tavern door now reads The Hollow Raven. The street sign reclaims its lettering. A passerby mutters, "Raven's Hollow's never this quiet on market day." The world exhales. Ellis returns to the bench and stares at the book. Why? Why did it erase the town's name? Was it testing something? Flexing a muscle? He reads further. The next note, again in his own hand. If memory can be softened in people, perhaps it can be softened in places. Historians still argue whether locations themselves can remember. Ancient beliefs held that stones, rivers and trees carried the weight of what had happened nearby. In Welsh folklore, certain valleys were said to mourn battles centuries after they were fought, fogging over on anniversaries and refusing to echo. Ellis wonders if he's begun treating the town like a patient, worse, like a subject. He jots in his ledger, "Never test dissolution on inhabited area again, not even out of curiosity." He closes the book. That evening, Mira returns. She enters quietly, eyes scanning the shelves, the floor, the air. "You felt it," she says. "I did," Ellis replies. "And so did they." Mira places a small box on the counter. It's lined with soft cloth and contains 6 vials, each labeled with neat, tight script. "For emergencies," she says. I've seen what happens when the book gets too curious. He eyes the vials. Antidotes? Anchors. If you ever forget yourself or the world forgets you, drink one. Ellis doesn't ask what's in them. He trusts her, or perhaps he trusts the way she doesn't flinch near the book. That night, Ellis lights another candle. It does not hum, the book remains shut. But on his mirror, where the fog usually collects in vague swirls, a single phrase has appeared, traced faintly in condensation. Your name is safe, for now. He wipes it away, then writes it back. Just in case. The sun is late, rising the next morning, or at least it feels that way. Ellis wakes not to birdsong or his aching joints, but to the distinct sensation of being watched. He opens his eyes slowly and finds a cat, sitting on the end of his bed, sleek, black as soot, and absolutely unbothered. Its eyes are bright green, unblinking, but most unsettling of all, it casts no shadow. None. Ellis blinks. The early light spills into the room at a slant. The bed frame casts a shadow. The picture on the washstand casts a shadow. Ellis himself casts a shadow, but not the cat. Let me guess, he mutters. You're not a stray. The cat cocks its head slightly, then hops off the bed, gliding with an unsettling grace, and pads silently to the workbench where the whispering book lies open. Again, as if it had never closed, it sits, curls its tail, and stares at the page. Not in that passive animal way. No, this is reading. The cat's gaze moves from left to right, flicks down, then back, as though it's genuinely absorbing the information. Ellis rises, slowly, feet cold against the floorboards. The book's current page is headed Speculum Catus. The mirror of the cat. Below that, a single line. When the shadowless watches, so too does the book. Ellis looks from the page to the cat. Oh, lovely. We're doing riddles now. The cat doesn't blink, just lets out a quiet, gravelly maa that feels less like a meow and more like punctuation. He kneels down, cautiously reaching a hand out to the creature. It doesn't flinch, doesn't move, but when he gets close enough to brush its fur, his fingers pass just slightly through it, as if the cat is mostly here, not entirely. The whispering book turns another page. This one is blank, except for a strange series of mirrored letters. Ellis fetches a hand mirror and holds it up to read. She will stay while you sleep. She watches backward. Clever and deeply unsettling. He names her because it feels rude not to. Shadow, he says. The cat blinks once, slow and deliberate. Accepting, she follows him throughout the day, never in the way, just present, watching, always on the edge of the light, yet never in the light, and never ever with a shadow of her own. Historians and folklorists have long debated the role of cats in medieval magical practice. While common cats were beloved for their ability to rid granaries of vermin, black cats without shadows were said to be familiar spirits, companions to those who worked with knowledge older than scripture. Some said these cats were born during eclipses. Others claimed they were the dreams of witches who had died but refused to vanish. Ellis brews a simple focused tea, mugwort, licorice root, and lemon balm, and watches as Shadow hops onto the windowsill and bats at nothing. At least, nothing he can see. He tries a test. He places an unmarked page beside the whispering book, just parchment, blank, then lights the humming candle. Shadow walks to it, sniffs once, and sits. Within moments, faint words begin to appear, only visible in the light of the candle, and only while the cat watches. The page reads, "Ask a question, but not aloud." Ellis thinks carefully. He focuses his mind on one question. What is the book's purpose? The ink glides onto the page, slow as dew, to collect, to echo, to endure. He asks another. And mine? The ink hesitates, then writes, to remember what others cannot. He leans back in his chair, heart thudding a little too loud. Shadow blinks at him, untroubled. That evening, something stranger still happens. He walks past his reflection in the window and notices that he doesn't cast a shadow either. Just for a moment, a flicker, then it's back, but the feeling lingers. The whispering book turns a page, without help, without wind. A poem appears, not in Latin this time, but Old Saxon. Ellis deciphers it slowly. It reads, A cat with no shadow walks dreams in reverse, guiding the keepers who carry the curse. When ink breathes silence and memory slips, she guards the words behind sealed lips. He reads it twice, then looks at Shadow. You're not just here to keep me company, are you? She yawns, wide, too wide, and inside her mouth he swears he sees something not of this world, stars perhaps, or pages fluttering in reverse. He does not ask more questions that night. Instead, he places a second dish of milk beside the hearth, not because she drinks, but because it feels right. He turns the candle down low, and as he drifts off to sleep, he sees her watching from the windowsill, tail curled around her body like a question he's not ready to answer. And the whispering book? Still, for now, rain again. Not the soft, whispery kind that wraps the village in a lullaby, but a sharp staccato fall that drums against the roof with purpose. Thunder rolls somewhere in the west, low and unhurried, like it's not quite done forming its opinion. Ellis is up early. The whispering book hasn't stirred yet. Shadow, the cat with no shadow, is curled on a windowsill, ears twitching slightly with every thunderclap but otherwise indifferent. Ellis stands over a small circle of salt. This morning, he's attempting something cautious. Or reckless. Possibly both. The page in the book reads, Circulus temporis lapsi, the circle of slipped time. A side note underneath in faint script reads, Use sparingly, time prefers its seams intact. The instructions are less recipe, more choreography. First, draw a circle of sea salt. Second, place an object tied to memory at the center. Third, anoint the rim with tincture of red clover and mugwort. Fourth, speak the last sentence you said before the moment you regret. Ellis isn't trying to reverse time. He just wants to peek. He remembers an argument. A moment with Aaron, years ago in spring. The words he said then were sharp, and too few. The silence after was longer. He doesn't remember what he should have said, only that it felt like he left something unfinished. So he chooses his object, an old wooden box, once used to store ink. Aaron's initials are still faintly carved on the underside, hidden beneath smudges of ash and clove. He places it in the salt circle, anoints the rim with his tincture, earthy and sweet-smelling. Mugwort always reminds him of riverbanks. Then carefully, deliberately, he speaks. Just go then, the storing tea. The exact words he'd flung in frustration. The moment hangs, then the air folds. Not loud, not visible, just a subtle shift, like the air remembered what it used to be doing and decided to return to it. The shadows inside the shop grow longer, not darker, just delayed, and the sound of the rain outside becomes echoed, as though each drop is repeating itself, a second behind. Time is slipping, just inside the circle. Ellis steps back. In the center, the box shimmers faintly, then something forms above it, wispy, pale. A vision, a memory. It shows him the room from that day. Arin stands near the door, hand on the latch, brows furrowed. Ellis sees himself, years younger, more stubborn, arms crossed, words sharp, then silence. And then a phrase Ellis never heard the first time. I never wanted to leave, but you never asked me to stay. The memory flickers. Gone. The box sits motionless once more. Ellis exhales, chest tight. He didn't know Arin had said that. Had he spoken too soon, or had memory shielded him from the weight of it? Historians still debate whether medieval alchemists truly manipulated time or simply experienced states of awareness enhanced by herbal-induced vision. Some believe the salt circles were psychological thresholds, symbols of permission rather than actual portals. But Ellis feels the echo still. He disperses the salt with his boot. The moment ends. The air unstitches itself. Shadow stretches but does not approach. She merely watches, as always. He jots a note in his ledger. Time slips viable in fixed perimeter. Emotional artifacts equal sign catalyst. Results not always merciful. He puts the box back on the shelf, wrapping it this time, not to hide it, just to let it rest. Later that afternoon, a visitor arrives. A woman with a scar under one eye and a copper brooch shaped like a bell. Is this where the salt circle happened? She asks. Not as a question. Ellis studies her carefully. Who are you? She smiles gently. Someone from the outside. Someone who used the same method once and never quite got the taste of mugwort out of her dreams. She introduces herself as Thelaine. She carries a leather case full of small mirrors, each etched with sigils. Traveling scholar, memory mender. She'd felt the ripple from Ellis's ritual. You slipped an hour, she says, almost two. Ellis frowns. The book didn't warn me. It rarely does, Thalen replies. It prefers action over permission. They sit, share dried apple slices, and black tea with elderflower. She warns him of the dangers of repeating the ritual too often. The more often you step back, the harder it is to trust what you remember. Eventually, all memory becomes suspect. And then, all truth. She gives him a small vial. It contains a greyish powder that shifts as he turns it. For anchoring, she says. A time-rooting dust. Burn it if you forget what moment you're in. He thanks her. She glances toward Shadow before leaving. She's a strong one, she says. Don't look too long into her eyes. She holds all your might have been. Then she vanishes into the rain. Ellis stands for a long moment at the doorway. Inside, the whispering book lies still, open to a new page. No recipe, just a single phrase. Do not build your home in the moment you miss. He reads it twice, then quietly blows out the candle. The next morning arrives not with rain or wind or humming flame, but with silence. True silence. No distant cartwheels, no creaking beams, not even the sleepy hum of bees outside the window. Ellis knows before he opens his eyes. The book has gone quiet. He rises, joints protesting as usual, and pads to the bench. The whispering book lies shut, its cover slightly curled as if recoiling. A fine fuzz of mould traces the edge of its spine, blue-grey, delicate as lace. It wasn't there last night. He does not touch it. He lights a candle. It does not hum. Shadow sits near the hearth, tail still, eyes sharp, her body more present than usual, more anchored. She doesn't look at the book. That, perhaps, is what unsettles Ellis most. The whispering book is not asleep. It's withdrawing. He tries speaking to it. Latin phrases, names, even Arin's name. Nothing. The candle sputters once, then goes out. He leans in to examine the mould. It's not ordinary. The growth moves against the grain of the leather, not like a fungus feeding, but like script, forming symbols in silence. He fetches his magnifying lens, brings it close. The mould is writing, slowly, painfully. It spells 3 Latin words: Luna, Veritas, Tolata, the moon. Truth, removed. He frowns. The moon. He checks the almanac scratched on the wall behind the herb shelf. Last night was a full moon, a lunar eclipse. He remembers vaguely. Mira had mentioned it would pass over the eastern range. And now, the book is silent. Historians still argue whether celestial events had practical effects on magical texts. Most dismissed it as superstition, but some, particularly among the lunar guilds of southern France, swore certain tomes slept during eclipses, as if robbed of their tether to memory. Ellis moves the book to the windowsill. The mould doesn't spread, it just waits. He tries opening it. The cover refuses to budge. Not stuck, not sealed, just resistant, like a door not ready to be opened. Instead, Ellis brews tea, something grounding, nettle, mint, a touch of ginger, something for days that feel untethered. He pours a second cup and places it beside Shadow. She sniffs it, then blinks once, in what could almost be gratitude. The book remains closed through breakfast, through midday, through sunset. No whisper, no shimmer, not even a tickle of suggestion. That night, Ellis dreams of pages falling like leaves. But when he catches them, they're blank. The ink is gone, the paper dissolves in his fingers. When he wakes, the book is cold, ice cold, its leather stiff, its corners brittle. The mould remains, but the script has faded. Ellis doesn't panic. He listens to nothing and finds that nothing is not peaceful. It's pressing. The whispering book has always murmured. Even in rest, it breathed like a slow bellows. But now it feels like holding a stone. He sets it in a clay basin lined with rosemary ash and watches it until his eyes blur. Shadow stays beside it the entire night. Sometime near dawn, a soft sound returns. Not a whisper, not Latin, but a pulse. Like the beat of a heart far away, it repeats 5 times, then silence again. Ellis presses his hand to the cover. Warmth. Barely. He doesn't open it. Not yet. Instead, he writes in his ledger, "The book entered eclipse state, resists inquiry, mold equals sign message medium, no decay observed, response resumed 19 hours post-lunar alignment." Then, on impulse, he fetches a small vial of lye from the back shelf. He dips a reed into it and carefully traces a small circle across the mold. The fungus recoils, writhes, briefly, then reforms. A new word this time. Wait. He exhales slowly. So he does. He waits. Cleans the shelves. Polishes jars. Rereads his earliest journal entries from 20 years ago. In one, he mentions a dream of a tower made of salt. He doesn't remember writing that. By nightfall, the book creaks. The spine arches slightly, like a stretch. Then the cover peels open, a single inch. Inside, the first page is blank, fresh, cream-colored. No ink, no shimmer, but pressed into the crease between the pages is a single object. A thorn, blackened at the tip. No plant in his garden grows thorns like that, nor any he's seen in the wild. He lifts it gently. The page beneath it shifts. A new heading appears, inked as if rising through the page like breath from deep soil. Spina tenebris, the thorn of silence. It's not a formula, it's a question. What do you fear forgetting? Ellis stares, and doesn't answer. Not yet. But he places the thorn in a glass vial, corks it, and writes the question in his ledger. He does not forget. Not this time. The storm arrives just after dusk, heralded not by lightning, but by a silence that falls so heavy it seems to pin the world in place. No wind, no rustle, not even the usual creak of the rafters above Ellis's bed. He sits upright, already half-dressed. His instincts know better than to sleep deeply when the whispering book enters a new mood. Outside, a low hum rides the air. Not mechanical, not natural, intentional. By the time the knock comes at the apothecary's door, he's already lighting the candle. A figure stands beyond the rain-beaded glass, tall, hooded, and somehow timeless. Ellis opens the door cautiously. The man steps inside without waiting for welcome. His face is pale, not sickly, but unweathered. His eyes, grey, bottomless, ancient. His hands gloved in soft leather worn to the colour of old vellum. He removes the hood, revealing hair gone white with age, or something deeper. He speaks. "I've come for the page I tore out." Ellis doesn't pretend confusion. "The book's been waiting," he says. The man nods slowly. "Yes." And it doesn't forgive. Ellis studies him. "You were a keeper, a long time ago, before whispers, before ink could speak." His gaze drifts to the bench, where the whispering book lies open, still showing the thorn question. "What do you fear forgetting?" The man walks toward it, like one returning to a grave. "I was its first," he says. Or perhaps its second. Records blur, and the book does not clarify. Ellis gestures to the candle. "And now I'm no longer allowed to forget." He reaches into his coat and pulls out a folded square of paper, rough-edged, fragile. He sets it beside the book. The whispering book reacts. Not immediately, but with a low vibration barely perceptible. Its pages ripple like they've taken a breath. The open page fades. The question vanishes. The book absorbs the torn piece, swallows it. The man watches, unmoved. "I tore it out because it demanded something I wouldn't give," he says. "A name, a sacrifice. I chose silence. And now?" Ellis asks. "Now I need to remember." Ellis offers him tea. Mugwort, clove, and a drop of fig oil. The man drinks it slowly, the cup steaming between his trembling fingers. "You're Ellis," the man finally says. "I've heard your name whispered on snow. I suppose that's flattering, or damning." The whispering book turns a page. A new formula writes itself out. Revenae memoria, the return of the remembered. The ingredients are chilling. Blood from the first wound. Ink drawn from forgotten tears. The breath of a secret. A page that wants to return. The man sighs. "I cannot gather these alone. I've tried, but the book chooses when to cooperate." Ellis nods, and now it's chosen me. He begins the work. The blood he draws from his thumb, a simple cut, the first wound of the night. For the tears, He remembers Arin again, not the arguments, but the quiet afterward, the ache. A single tear slides down his cheek. He catches it in a glass pipette and lets it rest beside a basin of charcoal ink. The breath of a secret? He exhales into a cloth pouch and speaks a phrase he's never said aloud. I loved you before I knew what that meant. The cloth warms. He dips the tip of a brush into the mixture and paints a single sigil onto a fresh page torn from the back of the whispering book, with its consent. It lets go of the sheet like a tree shedding a leaf in autumn. He places the painted page before the man. The man doesn't move. You must speak the memory aloud, Ellis says gently. The one you tore away. The man hesitates. His hands curl inward. Then, softly, her name was Balara. She asked me not to take the book. But I did, and it cost her her mind first, then her voice. The room stills. The page burns, not in fire, in light. Then the man changes. His shoulders loosen. His eyes blink. Once, twice. Tears come. He doesn't brush them away. The whispering book closes slowly. You've returned it, Ellis says. I have, the man replies. And now I can go. He walks to the door. Will I see you again? Ellis asks. If you remember me, the man says with a half smile, then the book has failed. He vanishes into the rain. Shadow, who's been utterly still until now, hops up to the bench. She paws the spot where the man stood, sniffs, then sits. The whispering book opens again. This time, a simple message. He was not the first. You will not be the last. Historians still argue whether immortal alchemists were real, or just symbols in evolving folk tales. But legends of those who carried memory too long, those who forgot how to die, persist across cultures. Ellis now knows that the weight of memory can stretch a life far beyond its natural arc. He writes one line in his ledger: some memories demand return, but few deserve it. The page in the book turns again. The next formula is waiting, and so is Ellis. The week passes in a blur of soft thunder and drifting fog. The whispering book is unusually quiet. Not silent, just thoughtful, like it's flipping through itself somewhere behind the curtain of reality. Ellis spends his days like an apothecary again. He makes cough syrups and eye rinses, balances the ledgers, and even scolds a noble's son for trying to pinch lavender buds when he thought no one was looking. But beneath that normal rhythm, something is shifting. It begins with the masks. They arrive 2 days before the harvest festival. Hung on doorposts, handed out by town elders, carved with care and just enough menace to keep things interesting. Wooden visages of stags and wolves, corn spirits and moon-faced women, all of them tied to the old custom of the truth walk. Ravens Hollow, like many medieval towns, held fast to its superstitions. One of the strangest during the harvest festival, everyone must wear a mask from dusk to dawn. The belief was simple: wearing another face freed your tongue. Truths would fall out, unburdened by identity. Wear your mask, the old saying went, so your truths don't know who said them. Ellis always found the tradition more poetic than practical, but this year the masks feel different. He watches townsfolk carve them with extra care, as if the act itself were sacred. He decides not to wear one. Shadow seems to approve. On the night of the festival, the village glows with lanterns strung from rooftop to rooftop. Wheat sheaves and dry herbs hang from poles, the scents mingling in the air. Music drifts through the square, drums and pipes, mostly in old rhythms. The townspeople dance in circles. They laugh, they drink, and they speak freely. Ellis stands at the edge of the square, arms crossed, watching. Then something strange happens. The whispering book which he left in the shop opens itself. He feels it, not hears it. Feels it, like the way a candle's flame tickles your skin without touching it. He rushes back. Inside, the book has turned to a new page, written in sharp vertical strokes, each line narrower than the last. The heading Vera Vultus, the true face subtext. In mask truth flows, in unmasking truth anchors. Then, bizarrely, a list, not of ingredients, but of phrases. He reads the first few. I never wanted the shop. He died thinking I hated him. I changed the recipe. On purpose. It should have been you. The ink shimmers as he reads. Shadow paces beside the bench, ears flat. Ellis turns the page. More phrases. I loved Arin, even when I said I didn't. The town never forgave me. I don't blame them. I drank the forgetting elixir. Twice. He stares. They aren't just phrases. They're confessions. Some of them are his. Others, he recognizes from the townspeople. He whispers one of them aloud. Just one. I changed the recipe. On purpose. The page vibrates. Ink spills from the margins. And then, slowly, letters rearrange into a name. He doesn't recognize it. But the book has just told him who said it. The masks aren't just masks anymore. They're keys. Ellis returns to the square, walking slowly through the masked dancers. He listens, not with his ears, but with that alchemical sense the book seems to be training in him. He passes a man in a fox mask. The man mutters under his breath, I buried the ring by the mill. Ellis doesn't react, just walks on. He passes a girl in a sun-faced mask. She sings, I saw my mother poison the stew. Not a single person acknowledges the confessions. It's tradition. But this time, the book is recording them. Ellis returns to the shop at midnight. The book is flipping pages on its own, hundreds, faster than he can follow. Then it stops. A new page writes itself. Tonight, memory anchors to the speaker. The mask is a vessel. The truth, a signature. Below that, smaller when the masks come off, the memories stay. Ellis steps back. This festival is no longer tradition. It's ritual, the kind that changes people. He looks at Shadow. You knew this, he says quietly. She blinks. He watches the page reconfigure itself one last time before the candle dims. A single question appears. What would you confess if no one ever knew it was you? He doesn't answer, but he doesn't look away. Historians still argue about the significance of masked rites during agrarian festivals. Some say they were merely cathartic. Others believe they were proto-psychological interventions. A few radical texts from the Andalusian scrolls claim that in such moments, collective confession could alter a town's memory altogether. Ellis now wonders, is he remembering these truths, or is the book remembering them for everyone? Outside, the final song of the night begins. A slow, haunting tune played on a single reed pipe. The villagers remove their masks, and no one says a word. They all remember, but none of them know why. The next morning dawns bright, brutally bright. Not the gentle warmth of a quiet sun, but the white-hot insistence of a world trying too hard to act normal. Raven's Hollow hums with the usual post-festival buzz. Bread ovens fire early. Children chase each other with leftover masks, their laughter a little too sharp. No one mentions what was said the night before, not out loud. Ellis doesn't open the shop. He sits at the workbench, elbows on the wood, the whispering book open before him. Today's page is stained with something dark. Not ink, not blood, something thicker, bone marrow. At the top of the parchment, the heading bleeds itself into view. Veritas medullae, the truth bound in marrow. Beneath it, an instruction, not a recipe but a challenge. Boil the truth from bone. Take only what the flesh tried to forget. Ellis leans back slowly, the breath catching in his throat. This isn't metaphor. This is procedure. He reads on. The book lays out the steps. Disturbingly clinical. Acquire a bone tied to deception. Heat in storm water until marrow loosens. Stir with iron. No other metal. Add red wort extract to reveal falsehoods. Inhale the steam. He closes his eyes. Thinks. There's a bone, a very specific one, buried in a locked cabinet under the floorboards, one he swore never to touch again, from years ago, from a time he was less apothecary, more opportunist. It had come from a patient, a merchant, travelling through with a broken leg and a sack full of secrets. He died under strange circumstances. The bone, his femur, was removed, not for science, not for necessity, but because the man had lied. Ellis had known it in his gut. He digs it out. The bone is yellowed, heavy, still wrapped in the thin leather cord he used to bind it. He hesitates, then unwraps it, lays it in the iron pot. He waits for rain. It comes within the hour. A heavy storm, perfect for collection. He places his rain funnel outside, gathers enough for the boil. He adds red wort, astringent, sharp-smelling. used sometimes to treat snake bite. The symbolism isn't lost on him. Then he stirs. The marrow begins to loosen, curling upward in cloudy tendrils. The air thickens. He leans in, breathes it in, and remembers, not his memories. The merchants, fragments, a wife waiting for a letter that was never written, a map drawn on human skin, burned to keep its secrets, a bribe, a name spoken at the wrong time, and worst of all, a deal made with someone who had no face, only pages. Ellis pulls back, dizzy. Shadow jumps onto the bench, eyes wide, ears flat. The whispering book screams, not audibly, but in sensation. A vibration that runs up through the floorboards, into the shelves, through the jars and bottles. The book's pages flutter like wings caught in a storm. Then stillness. The bone cracks. Inside a fragment, a tooth, no too flat, not human, a molar from some other mouth. Polished, ancient, carved with letters. Ellis places it on the open page. The book absorbs it. A new page forms. A confession. He lied to keep the book from spreading. He killed to seal the page. I kept the tooth. Ellis recoils. His hands are shaking. The page fades. Then another appears. This one is blank until he drips a bit of the bone broth onto it. The words burn into being. Would you lie to protect what truth destroys? He doesn't answer, but he writes the question in his ledger, then burns the rest of the marrow. Outside, the rain turns from steady to violent. The street floods in places. The candle near the window sputters, flickers blue for a moment, an omen of strong truth. According to an old Slavic herb witch Ellis once met, he watches the book settle, shadow pads over, and places her paw gently on the edge of the page. The book purrs. No other word fits. And then, a small compartment in the spine clicks, opens. Inside, a folded scrap of parchment, smaller than a coin. Ellis lifts it carefully, unfolds. A single line. If you want truth, be prepared to lose what you believed. Historians still debate whether the extraction of memory from bone was ever real practice, or just alchemical metaphor. Some say boiling marrow to reveal truth was a rite of self-inflicted madness. Others call it the first form of forensic dreaming. Ellis doesn't care which, because tonight, for the first time in years, he dreams in voices not his own, not people, pages. They speak, they burn, and they do not lie. The morning arrives slow and grey, as if reluctant to interrupt whatever Ellis dreamed last night. He sits at his bench, eyes heavy, tea untouched. There's ash under his fingernails, and a faint scent of burnt red wart on his sleeves. He can't recall falling asleep, but he must have, because the whispering book has turned a page, and something is different. The ink on this new spread seems to ripple ever so slightly, as if the letters are floating on water. The paper hums, not audibly, but he feels it in his jaw, like a sound right below hearing, or above understanding. Shadow lies still under the bench, not sleeping, just watching. Ellis reads the pages, heading aloud. Vitrum clamoris, the screaming glass. Not ominous at all. The ingredients are minimal, which usually means trouble. Bottles from pre-memory. Sound sealed in wax. Echoes caught on glass. A single whisper spoken to oneself. He frowns. Pre-memory. He checks the margin, tiny script. A bottle used before its purpose was known. He stares at the wall of jars lining his shop. Carefully labelled, sorted, shelved with love and worry over decades. But one set sits near the bottom, unlabelled, dusty, odd. Inherited bottles. They came with the shop. No record of what they were ever meant for. He never trusted them enough to use. Ellis selects 3. Their glass is clouded, bluish. When he holds one to the light, he sees faint ripples, not flaws, patterns, like veins in stone. When he uncorks the first one, the shop seems to exhale. Something moves, just air, surely, but it feels like a sigh that's waited centuries. He unseals the others. The room tilts, only slightly, as if the space within those bottles had been older than the room that housed them. Ellis moves carefully now. He places the bottles in a triangle, per the diagram in the book, then begins sealing wax over their mouths. He hums as he does it, An old lullaby his mother once sang, not because the recipe calls for it, just because he's afraid of the silence. The wax hardens. Next, capture echoes. Ellis walks to the rear of the shop where the walls have always held more noise than they should. He's whispered secrets there. Once, long ago, he yelled at no one in particular, begging the book to stop talking. He speaks now not loud, but steady. I'm sorry I kept things quiet for so long. Then he taps the wall 3 times and catches the echo with a clean glass slide. He does it again, this time silence. Then a 3rd time, and hears not his voice, but Arin's, clear, tired. You always chose the page over the person. Ellis drops the slide. It shatters. He sits down hard on the bench, the weight of it sudden. But the book writes anyway. Enough has been captured. It instructs him to pour a tincture made of myrtle and fennel over the bottle mouths, and speak a whisper never meant for ears. He knows exactly what to say. I read your name every night, even after I forgot your voice. The bottles vibrate, not with resonance, with resistance. Then the first one screams. It's faint, but unmistakable. A human scream, trapped, echoing, not pained, desperate. A scream not of terror, but of begging to be remembered. Ellis clamps his hands over his ears. The 2nd bottle shrieks next, higher, keening. The 3rd emits a long, low moan that rattles the dried rue jars and sends shadow darting to the rafters. Not ordinary silence, absence. The page in the whispering book changes mid-air, as if the scream itself is writing. It says, "These were voices buried by potions of forgetting, bottles sealed when memory failed. They want release." Ellis gathers the bottles, corks them quickly, wraps them in linen. He sets them in a cedar box lined with lavender buds. He doesn't bury them, not yet, but he does label them, in his own hand, regret, warning, and truth denied, one for each scream. Later, as dusk creeps into the window panes, he uncorks the smallest bottle, just slightly, lets a single whisper escape. It's his own voice, younger. "I don't need anyone. I have the book." He flinches. Shadow watches from the rafters. Her tail flicks once. Historians still argue whether glass can hold sound. Some say yes, that sharp emotional outbursts can imprint on silica, leaving ghost echoes. One obscure 15th century theory, Vocalis Vitrum, proposed that shrieked confessions could be sealed in bottles as a way of preserving burden. Modern thinkers call it absurd. Ellis disagrees. He corks the bottle again, carefully, respectfully. The book now reads, "There are more bottles. Not all are yours." He doesn't ask whose they are, because he already knows. To Raven's Hollow is built on bottled noise, and tonight some of it remembers how to scream. The sky is pale, colourless, the kind of morning where the sun rises like it regrets the decision. Ellis moves slowly today. His knees ache worse than usual, and there's a deep throb behind his eyes like he's forgotten to blink for hours. He's cleaned the bottles, triple-checked his tincture shelf, and swept the floors twice, not because they needed it, but because he needed something else to do. The whispering book is open, waiting. The page is still. He hasn't dared touch it yet. Because today it offers something final. Formula ultima, pretium veritatis, the final formula, the price of truth. And beneath that, to complete the book's memory, you must give it yours. Not all of it, not your birth date, not your address, not even your name, but something foundational, something that roots you to yourself. A recipe of sorts is listed below, not for a potion to brew, but for a ritual to offer. A lock of hair taken during your happiest moment. A whisper given only once, to only one person. A vial of preserved joy. Ellis knows the distillate. He's made it before, twice, and one memory so precious that forgetting it would undo you. At the bottom, in faint but unmistakable ink, is a line he hoped never to see. The book requests your memory of your first love. He swallows hard. Orin. Of course it would be Orin. Shadow hops gently onto the workbench. She doesn't meow. She knows. He speaks aloud, not to her, not to the book, to himself. "I said I loved him, once, but I didn't say it when it mattered." He opens the small chest under his bed. Inside, wrapped in linen and dried lavender, lies a small wooden locket. No engraving, no hinges, just a smooth circular disc. Inside, sealed with resin, is a single wisp of hair, faint auburn. From that spring afternoon, in the orchard, the day he said nothing, he sets it beside the book. The page warms. The candle sputters. The flame leans toward the book, as if pulled by gravity. Ellis adds the next piece. A whisper, one he spoke only once, into Aaron's neck, one foggy morning. Not even sure he meant it, but he wanted to. He writes it onto the vellum in ash-water ink. The words vanish, absorbed. Then comes the vial. Joy distilled. A tricky process requiring saffron, rosemary, and the sound of laughter captured on wax paper. He'd kept one dose, sealed in green glass, labeled simply, "Mine." He uncorks it. The scent makes him flinch. Sunlight, wild thyme, river breeze. A summer that never returned. He pours it over the page. The parchment soaks it greedily. Last, the memory. Ellis closes his eyes. He lets it bloom. A garden of sensation. Aaron's voice, low and rough from sleep. The smell of nettles on their hands, after they harvested too late into the dusk. The way Aaron said, "Don't look at me like that." And Ellis did anyway. He thinks of the last night. The argument. The silence. The departure. And then he thinks of not remembering it. What would it mean, to lose that, to be lighter or less? He places a hand on the page, and he gives it, not with words, but with release. The ink flares. The book hums, not a whisper, not a command, but a sound like paper catching fire and healing at the same time. The candle goes out. The room is still, and Ellis forgets. Not all of it, but enough. The locket now feels like someone else's keepsake. The name Aaron tastes like air, something on the tip of the tongue, elusive, the shape of a memory without its bones. Shadow leaps down and nuzzles his leg. The whispering book closes. Its cover no longer breathes. Instead, it sleeps. On the final page, a single sentence glows faintly. The book remembers now. You don't have to. Historians, those who believe such texts existed, often describe their final act as consumption. The last keeper offers something vital, something unrecoverable, and in doing so, completes the book. One theory refers to this as the binding of silence, where the text absorbs the last living echo of an unwritten truth. Ellis breathes slowly. The book is done. It no longer turns pages, no longer whispers. It simply is. He places it in a silk-wrapped satchel and tucks it into the hollow behind the hearth. Not hidden, just resting. And then he makes tea, lemon balm and fennel. His hands do not shake. Outside, Raven's Hollow is bustling again. No one remembers the names said aloud at the festival. No one asks why their bottles hum faintly in the dark. The truth was spoken, and now it lives elsewhere. Ellis stands in the doorway of his apothecary. He smiles, not because he's joyful, but because something has lifted. He doesn't remember exactly what, but he's grateful for the space it left behind. The days stretch quietly after that. The air turns crisper. The morning's wrapped in a fine silver mist that clings to every rooftop and leaf. Raven's Hollow moves on, as villages do. New ailments rise. Old superstitions resurface. Children carve faces into turnips and hang them above doorways. The world remembers what it must, and forgets what it can. The whispering book no longer stirs. It lies behind the hearth, wrapped in silk the color of deep plum. Ellis hasn't touched it since that day. He's not afraid of it. Just finished. It doesn't breathe anymore, doesn't hum. It has grown still in that ancient, satisfied way. Only things that have fed deeply can grow still. Shadow remains, always close. She walks the windowsills at dusk and curls beside the apothecary's chair at dawn. Her eyes are softer now, no less deep, but less searching, as though she, too, has completed her task. Ellis spends his mornings brewing modest things, rosehip syrup for coughs, dried marjoram for anxious stomachs, gentle tonics for children too tangled in dreams. The strange tinctures, the memory folds, the bottles that scream, they're still there, but no longer urgent, no longer calling. And then, 1 week after the book's silence, comes the rain. soft at first, then thick and rhythmic, a steady curtain of water on the cobbled streets. It smells of pine smoke and last apples, the kind of rain that washes without asking questions. Ellis rises in the night, heart oddly calm. He dresses, boils water, prepares one last vial, because he remembers now what must come next. He places the tea on the bench, lights a single candle, no hum, then he unwraps the book. Its cover is cool, smooth, the leather no longer pulses, the spine no longer creaks. He opens it carefully, half expecting nothing. The pages are blank, all of them. Every single one, no ink, no formulas, no whispers, only a faint, honey-like scent clinging to the edges, remnants of joy once captured and pressed into the vellum. Ellis smiles. He understands. The book no longer speaks because it has become full of memory, full of moments, full of him. It is no longer a book for brewing, or binding, or bending memory. It is an archive now, silent, still, sacred. And so, that evening, he performs one final ritual. He places the whispering book in a cedar box, lines the bottom with sprigs of rosemary and dried thyme, both protective, both remembering herbs. He seals the lid with wax melted from the humming candle, the very first one that sang. Then he walks into the garden. The rain patters on the leaves like soft applause. He digs beneath the hawthorn tree, where the soil is dark and rich and ancient, places the box there, covers it slowly, no words, just memory. Shadow curls beside the tree, tail tucked over her paws. She purrs, quiet and steady, then turns her head sharply toward the road. A figure approaches, not quite a stranger, not quite known. They wear a travelling cloak, rain-dark and heavy, and carry a parcel wrapped in oilskin. Ellis watches them stop before the shop. They knock, 3 measured raps, familiar, soft. Ellis opens the door. The figure looks at him, face still hidden in the shadow of the hood, then offers the package. No explanation, no name, just a nod. Ellis takes it. Inside, under the soft candlelight, he unwraps it. Another book, leather-bound, untitled, cool to the touch. The spine breathes. A whisper rises, not Latin but something older. Ellis sighs, long and slow, and smiles. Because of course it never ends. It only passes forward, and the apothecary. He is ready. Again. So now we exhale, slowly. Let the bench fade behind us. The scent of thyme and old ink drift into the rafters. Let the rain fall a little softer, and the fire crackle just a little slower. The whispering book has gone quiet, and Ellis, the apothecary who remembered too much, can finally sleep without pages turning in his dreams. You can almost feel the warmth of the hearth against your skin now, the way the light dances gently across the glass jars, reflecting old colours, faded saffron, violet oil, dusk-coloured tinctures, and outside, the world continues. The townsfolk of Ravens Hollow wake with fog in their hair and bread rising in their kitchens. They don't remember the truth they once spoke aloud beneath their masks. They don't remember the brief moment their town forgot its name, but they smile more freely now. Sometimes, that's enough. Shadow still wanders the window ledges, tail flicking lazily, eyes bright as ever. She knows what was given up, and she knows what must be guarded. And Ellis? He sleeps longer, not because he's tired, but because his mind is finally quiet. There are no more bottles that scream in the night, no more crows tapping messages in forgotten code, no more tinctures to twist time or mend memory or rewrite grief. Just quiet. And yet, even now, deep beneath the hawthorn roots, the whispering book waits. Not to speak, not to whisper, just to remember. Maybe someday someone else will find it. A child gathering hawthorn berries, a wanderer seeking shelter, someone curious enough to open the wrong box. Maybe that someone will be you, but not tonight. Tonight, you rest. The storm has passed, the pages have settled, and the apothecary, our Ellis, is finally allowed to forget. So wherever you are now, take a deep breath, in and out. Let go of whatever you're holding in your chest. You've carried it far enough. The shop lights are dim now, the tea has cooled, the candle has burned low, and the world for a while is still. Thank you for staying with me. I hope you found something here worth keeping. Maybe not a formula, maybe not a name, but perhaps a memory, one that hums quietly just for you. Good night. Sweet dreams.